Tonight in 9 News, kidnapped. A 3-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl snatched. Their mother bound and gagged during a terrifying home invasion. An alarming spike in mystery cases as the Delta outbreak spreads from Essendon to Sorrento. Calls to make vaccines mandatory for hospital staff as the COVID emergency at the Royal Melbourne escalates. The Shepparton cluster grows as police investigate a recent funeral. A supermarket joins forces with Uber to deliver groceries to your door in under an hour. And all eyes on the glittering prize up for grabs, just not in Victoria.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. A frantic search is underway for 2 young children abducted from their Blackburn North home. Police say a man bound and gagged their mother before assaulting her and fleeing in her car. Crime reporter Lana Murphy.
Darkness is setting in and Adila and Bilal Wally are still missing. The 3- and 5-year-old were abducted from their home, wearing their pyjamas that were stolen by a stranger who broke in and assaulted their mother.
They would be in great fear and obviously wanting to see their mum and dad.
The children were kidnapped around 8:45 a.m. by an armed man. Police say he entered the Springfield Road property, tied up the woman inside and bundled the kids into the family's car.
They're serious injuries that require medical attention.
He fled towards Nunawading in the black Mercedes C200 sedan, registration BEQ 882, leaving their mother bound and gagged, forced to crawl out to her driveway, begging for help.
I went to the front and could hear her yelling and screaming.
We saw a lady on the nature strip, her mouth was bound, her hands were bound and her feet and everything. So we thought that was strange, and then she was just screaming and kind of looked like it was a scarf or something, but then it was rope.
Passers-by helped untie the 32-year-old woman who speaks little English and sustained significant injuries.
She's very upset, as is the father, and both are cooperating fully with us.
The father was at work in the building industry. The family is not known to police. They moved into the home a year ago. Neighbours say they were friendly and the children always played outside.
Oh, they're gorgeous. they're beautiful little kids.
Police have not established whether this was targeted and say they're just desperate to bring 2 children home.
It is concerning, but I'm hopeful that we will be able to locate the children and reunite them with their mum and dad and get them back to being where they need to be.
Let's go live now to Lana for the latest from Blackburn North. Lana, police remain at the scene.
Pete, the rain has settled in, but the home is still saturated by police, and every single officer across the state is keeping a lookout for this Mercedes and the children. No one more desperate to find them as soon as possible than their parents. Their mother remains in hospital being treated for her injuries. Their father is still assisting police trying to work out whether or not this man is known to the family. Investigators tell me he spent at least 15 minutes inside the home before taking off in that black Mercedes, and they are asking every single Victorian who has dash cam installed in their car to check their footage, look for the Mercedes and come forward. Again, Pete, the registration is BEQ 882.
OK, Lana Murphy, thanks for that update. Delta's stronghold is getting tighter, with as many as 55 of today's 71 cases infectious in the community. None of those in intensive care had been vaccinated, and thousands of appointments are being cancelled every day. State political reporter Mark Santomartino.
Weeks after an infected footballer played for Newport, young men linked to the club and this Spotswood gym are blamed for driving local infections.
You might think you're indestructible, but we need you to get tested if you've got symptoms.
10 linked to the cluster are in today's 71 new cases. At least 55 were infectious in the community, including some, the Premier says, had been told to isolate.
There's no room for error. It will spread.
More concerningly, 22 cases are mysteries, spread from Essendon West to Thornbury, Fitzroy North to Maidstone, all the way to Sorrento and now Geelong.
The hope to that is that collectively it's a wake-up call.
The Chief Commissioner confirming a police investigation into a funeral at Shepparton on August 11, the same day sewerage samples turned positive.
Well, let's not jump to any conclusions though in terms of what's happened in Shepparton.
The Shepparton outbreak is not as yet genomically or otherwise connected into what we're seeing that's happening in Melbourne. That is a major concern.
All 3 of Shepparton's high schools have been impacted, children continuing to make up more than 200 of Victoria's 494 active cases.
We've also got examples of children, collapsing at school and vomiting at school. That's how ill they are.
An infant is among the 29 infected patients in Victorian hospitals. 9 of those are in intensive care, 5 on ventilators.
Nobody who is in ICU has been vaccinated.
35,000 Victorians were jabbed yesterday. More than half of the state who is eligible has had 1 dose. Just 30% are fully vaccinated. But with Pfizer opening up for under 40s at the end of the month, thousands of people are skipping or cancelling bookings.
10,000 people a day that are either no-shows or are cancelling. That's double what it was a week ago.
That'll just mean a longer queue for what is still a limited supply of vaccine to the state. We need people to get vaccinated now.
80% is months away, but already New South Wales is talking freedom.
Once you get to 70% double dose vaccinations, you start to transition and treat COVID as you would the flu.
A shift away from lockdowns backed by the Prime Minister that our Premier wouldn't commit to.
We're not making stone tablets here, mate. I can't rule out masks, or if we had a really nasty outbreak in a vulnerable community, in a suburb or in an aged care facility. We might lock down a whole lot of aged care facilities if we had a problem in aged care. I can't rule that out.
If not at 70% and 80%, then when? Then when? This cannot go on forever. This is not a sustainable way to live in this country.
Mark, more than 50,000 appointment slots are yet to be filled for the week ahead.
And the majority of them are Pfizer appointments, Pete. That being said, you wouldn't know so many appointments were available standing at the front of the convention centre. There are dozens upon dozens of people lining up here in the cold, in the wet, all with bookings ready to get their vaccines. This is a race, and now we know which parts of the state are leading. Bendigo and Geelong are neck and neck. Both cities have managed to get at least 1 dose in the arm of 61% of their locals over the age of 15. 38% of them are fully vaccinated. By comparison, Melbourne's numbers are a little bit lower. We do have a higher population, but those outer suburbs, particularly the northwest, are emerging as areas of concern, Pete. Just 43% of people in the northwest region have had at least 1 dose over the age of 15, and only 23% of them are fully vaccinated.
OK, thank you, Mark Santomartino. The Premier says he has no plans to make vaccines mandatory for hospital staff, despite fears some may be refusing to get the jab. Reid Butler says the outbreak at the Royal Melbourne is getting worse, with 10 patients and staff now infected.
From the Royal Melbourne to Werribee, Sunshine and Footscray, the front line's been breached, and it's our healthcare workers paying the price.
We're all worried.
And this is a scenario that we really need to pull up very quickly.
The state has many COVID spot fires, but the Royal Melbourne's outbreak is among the most concerning. 4 patients and 6 staff members have now tested positive. The cluster stands at 10. The initial exposure happened close to 2 weeks ago on August 12, and that makes contact tracing much more difficult. 450 staff have so far been forced to furlough.
Furloughing is tough. That's why we've got to keep this out of hospitals.
But the Premier stopped short of mandating vaccines for hospital staff, like Queensland and New South Wales have.
There are outliers, a small minority among healthcare workers who refuse for various reasons. If you don't want to have a vaccine or you don't want to disclose whether you've had a vaccine, then you should not be allowed to treat patients.
Because vaccines aren't mandatory, hospital management can't access official immunisation records.
Daniel Andrews, who has been telling everybody, stay at home, don't go and look at a sunset, yet he hasn't given our hospitals what they need to know, and that is who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been.
As well as dealing with its own outbreak, the Royal Melbourne is also treating 12 COVID patients. 3 are in ICU. And with staff shortages and PPE requirements being raised to the highest level, it's a tough time for the front line.
It's absolutely exhausting. It's difficult to work in full PPE if you're fully gowned, fully gloved, face shield, N95 mask.
But healthcare workers know it could be worse.
We have to get this right in Victoria, and we need everybody in Victoria to help.
And readers at St Vincent's tonight. Read a scare now at that hospital.
Pete, you can add St Vincent's to the list of hospitals that has been exposed here. 24 emergency department staff are in quarantine tonight. This comes after a case visited the ED here at St Vincent's on Saturday, the 14th of August. They were here from around 7 a.m. until just before 6 p.m, so all day, and that happened over a week ago. So we're only finding out details of this now, and that is a concern. I've been told that the positive case was a patient rather than a staff member. The hospital is operational tonight and there has been no significant impact on services. Pete?
Reid Butler. As contact tracers work to unravel just how the Shepparton outbreak started, local health teams are bracing for infections to soar. Maggie Rayworth reports around 16,000 Goulburn Valley residents are tonight in isolation.
On day 4 of the Shepparton outbreak, another school becomes an exposure site.
Kind of scary, yeah. Don't want to get the COVID.
Notre Dame College is the latest to be closed, joining Greater Shepparton Secondary College's 4 campuses and St Mel's Primary School, sending thousands into isolation. More schools are expected to be listed as Tier 1 exposure sites.
I'm a carer, so I work for Calvary Care, so yeah, going into people's homes, you're a bit worried about it.
Among the almost 16,000 close contacts, at least 270 are vital medical staff, putting intense pressure on testing sites.
Anticipating the fact that we were going to need to test around 10 to 11,000 people in the Shepparton community for COVID-19. We now think that's more likely to be in excess of 16,000.
The Shepparton cluster has grown to 36 cases, mostly children.
We expect that number is going to continue to grow in the coming days.
Residents told to check exposure sites regularly and warned they're growing rapidly. What's still unknown is just how the virus made its way to Shepparton. Cases here aren't genomically linked to Melbourne, meaning the cluster could be bigger than initially thought.
That is a major concern. Is that a new incursion in from New South Wales? Is it some kind of other connection point between the existing outbreak we've known about? We don't have that data at this point in time.
Police are investigating whether a large funeral sparked the outbreak.
Certainly something we're looking at and that the Department of Health is well aware of in terms of determining whether there are any risks posed as a result of it.
Like it has before, this community is eager to beat the virus again.
We as the Shepparton community came together, we got tested really quickly, and that just shows us how we as a community work.
In Shepparton, Maggie Rayworth, 9 News.
Battling 818 new infections today, the New South Wales Premier wants people to instead focus on vaccination numbers. But her health chief has hinted primary school students could be forced to learn from home for the rest of the year. Stephanie Anderson explains.
Another 818 infections added to her state's bleak tally, but Gladys Berejiklian says that's not the figure to focus on.
I just urge people not to have the roller coaster of emotions of case numbers every day. The number we really need to focus on is the vaccination rate.
And last week, that statistic set a new record. 738,000 jabs delivered over 7 days, 31% of New South Wales now double dose protected.
I'd set a target of 6 million by the end of the month, and it looks like we'll be at least a week ahead of schedule.
But the breakdown of the daily figures is still sobering. 771 people potentially infectious in the community and another 3 deaths, all aged in their 80s. 586 people are being treated in hospital, 100 in ICU.
You may have the wife in one hospital and the husband in another, and then their parents in a different hospital again. And then we've got the layer of having their children who might also be infected.
And with that rate of infection causing increasing concern, there's a school of thought that remote learning may remain for the rest of the year. The health chief giving the strongest indication yet that returning to the classroom could be tied to vaccination, even though the vast majority of kids aren't yet eligible.
We have not concluded our thinking. We have effective vaccines that work, and so that will be a factor that really influences the safety of school settings.
Stephanie Anderson, 9 News.
The Prime Minister insists Australia has to live with COVID and is urging all states to ease restrictions as vaccination rates hit 70 and 80%. But with rising caseloads in Victoria and New South Wales, other jurisdictions aren't keen to stick to the national plan. Here's Chris Uhlmann.
Scott Morrison is trying to shift the politics of the pandemic.
That is our goal, to live with this virus, not to live in fear of it.
After 18 months trying to eliminate the virus through border closures and punishing state lockdowns, the Prime Minister says the vaccination gateways in the national plan of 70% for limiting restrictions and 80% for ending lockdowns are the way out, no matter how high the virus caseload grows.
We have to move forward. We cannot hold back.
Even at high vaccination rates, the disease will circulate, putting hospital systems under increasing strain.
There will be risk attached to it, but there is also risk by remaining stuck where we are.
So those states with little or no disease are reaching for the fine print in the national plan and threatening to keep their borders closed.
The goalposts have changed in the fact that it was premised on there being around 30 cases in the community, and now we have thousands of cases.
But the two biggest states now shuttered by outbreaks are on song with the Prime Minister.
The number we really need to focus on is the vaccination rate. Once we hit 70% double dose, we'll be able to live life more freely.
70 and 80% will mean we have many more choices, many more options, and they're all better than the very challenging circumstances that we face now.
If New South Wales and Victoria move together, then the other states will be forced to make a choice. Join them or keep their borders shut for months or years. And before long, the economic and political costs of that will become intolerable.
This Groundhog Day has to end, and it will end.
But before it ends, there will be a bruising political battle. Chris Ullman, 9 News. Time has almost run out for the MCG, with the AFL just days away from shifting the grand final to either Perth or Adelaide. Clint Stanaway tells us Victorian-based teams should brace for an extended time away when they depart this week.
After a 6-month juggling act, the AFL's fixture boss appears relieved to finally have the Premiership Cup in hand, as slowly but surely the grand final picture becomes clearer.
I'd like to think in the coming days we'll have a view on where the grand final will be played.
Given Melbourne's COVID struggle, the MCG remains the longest of outsiders, and while the league isn't playing favourites, a Perth decider on September 25 is sounding more and more likely. There's also every chance Victorian clubs could remain on the road for the entirety of their campaign.
There might be the opportunity to keep them on the road if we have a decision about the grand final, and if it's not the MCG.
Among the AFL's big announcement, a freeze on ticket prices for a final series most Victorians won't get anywhere near. But Tasmanian footy fans are already cashing in, with the first of 10,000 tickets to both elimination finals going on sale to club members today.
I think it's really good that we're getting football down here.
It's kind of different, makes us feel a bit bigger.
And all going to plan, the Apple Isle could host a semi-final the week after too.
We right now just need options.
The finals are here, and after another unbelievable season...
Go Demons, let's go baby!
Still, nobody knows how or where it all ends.
I think you catch yourself sometimes thinking about what if, why can't it be us, I suppose. You set out as a team to, have ultimate success.
Clint Stanaway, 9 News.
Now looking ahead to more sport, Tony Jones.
Thank you, Pete. Good evening. Not just the finals action dominating footy at the moment. At Carlton, the coaching crisis there has become one very sorry saga. Ed and Woolley is at Princess Park.
Tony David Teague arrived here at Princess Park earlier this morning, believing today might be the day he was going to be sacked. Instead, he departed a short time ago with his future publicly at least no clearer tonight. He was presented with the review into the football department by the President and the Chief Executive today, but instead of a formal announcement after that meeting, instead just a statement from the President. We'll have that for you, plus the players' comments a little later in sport.
All right, Ed, and thanks for that. Also tonight, why Dangerfield doesn't care about last Saturday's loss to the Demons. We check in with Toby and learn why the captaincy agrees with him and why Ash Barty's latest win wasn't exactly on the money. A lot of whys there to ponder over. We'll also ask why is Scott Pendlebury playing games at the moment? Caroline Wilson will try to get to the bottom of that.
Oh, good. OK, thank you, Tony. Next, a grieving father's powerful tribute to his partner and 2 young children lost in the Parkville tragedy. Plus, cash relief for burnt-out parents forced to keep kids home from childcare. And quick and convenient, Uber signs up to deliver groceries within 60 minutes. A heartbroken father whose partner and 2 young children died in a fiery crash outside the Royal Women's Hospital on Friday says there are no words to describe his pain. A 35-year-old Cheltenham woman, her 8-year-old daughter and 20-month-old son were tragically killed on Friday after the car they were in struck a pole and burst into flames. Craig, who did not reveal his family name, issued a statement today thanking the community for its support and asking for privacy as the family grieves. The cause of the smash is under investigation. The early childhood industry is in a state of confusion tonight about which families are eligible for care and who will foot the bill. The state government gave some clarity today, but many are still struggling to make sense of the rules. More from Laura Turner.
A mother's phone footage says it all.
Hi.
2-year-old Evie trying to blend into the home office furniture as her mum manages the juggle.
It's a matter of how am I going to get through the week and my obligations as both an employee and as a mum.
After a weekend of stress and uncertainty, some clarity from the Premier this morning.
One parent in a household who is an authorised worker will mean you are eligible for a childcare permit.
But it doesn't help Sarah Ryan. Her childcare centre requires both parents to be authorised workers. Others are charging parents childcare fees despite the fact kids can't attend.
There would absolutely be instances where families who are not able, under the new restrictions, to send their children would still potentially be receiving bills.
Georgina Dimitrakis Haloulis won't charge parents if their kids can't attend, but will foot the bill herself.
Can do it for a week, 2 weeks. Beyond that, we'll be faced with a lot of uncertainty.
The federal government announcing centres will receive 25% of pre-lockdown revenue if they're subject to state-imposed rules.
Any childcare centre which has been locked down, in a lockdown area, for 4 weeks or more.
But today's federal announcement has left parts of the sector confused as to the definition of lockdown and what they're eligible for.
Are we talking complete lockdown, centre shut? Or is it because we are still operating?
Meantime, employers are facing less productivity from parents with kids at home.
Employers need to recognise that they might not get 100% capacity out of somebody that's got to be home. From an employee perspective, you can look at maybe taking a week off.
And for parents, if and when they can access care, there's that other concern, the risk of COVID.
If you send them, do you put them at risk of, catching COVID?
Laura Turner, 9 News.
Two big players in online shopping and delivery are joining forces to make lockdown life a little easier. Woolworths and Uber are trialling a new service in Melbourne, dispatching fruit, veggies and pantry staples within an hour. Vicky Jardim has the details.
Groceries, fresh fruit and vegetables. If you run out, from next week, products from selected Woolworths Metro stores will be delivered to your door within 60 minutes, straight from your Uber Eats app. But it will cost you.
And we see this partnership as a real evolution of that convenient shopping experience for great fresh food and everyday essentials.
Lockdowns and restrictions have seen a growing number of households switch to an app or online shopping. In Melbourne, there are 3 locations: Balaclava, Hadfield and Hawthorn. Each customer can select 25 household staples from around 1,200 products. A bag of apples, for example, is considered one item. Your shop will cost you up to 10% more than what you would pay in store, and on top of that is a delivery fee depending on your location.
COVID has definitely accelerated consumer demand for convenience. We've seen the delivery business grow significantly, and consumers are wanting increasingly more than just restaurants.
There are plans to grow this service rapidly and nationally, with 200 Woolworths outlets throughout Australia expected to join by next year.
In early 2019, Coles teamed up with Uber Eats, but the partnership quietly fizzled. Woolworths adapting to the growing popularity of convenience.
We see they bring millions of customers and a very fast and reliable service to our stores, and that's really what our customers are asking for.
Vicky Jardim, 9 News.
Lavinia's along now. The weather really brought us back to earth today, Lavinia.
Crashing down, Pete. After temperatures in the 20s across the weekend, a southwesterly change arrived in the city this morning. It's been 8 degrees cooler than yesterday, peaking at just 14.3. A band of showers also moved in from the west last night, cleared Melbourne by 9 a.m, so the city had that lovely sunny start to the day. before light showers returned in the afternoon. Southeastern suburbs collected the best totals early this morning, 8 at Pakenham the highest, and eastern parts of the state have done the best today with falls of 10 to 15 millimetres. The light showers will continue across Melbourne tonight. I'll let you know what we can expect tomorrow a little later in the bulletin, Pete.
Good, thank you, Lavinia. Notorious Porsche driver Richard Pusey will plead guilty to a string of other serious charges. The major court development next. Plus, Melbourne researchers discover the golden window for couples using IVF and how you could win free flights or accommodation just by getting the jab.
9 News, brought to you by RMIT's Open Day. Next Fest, August 29.
Porsche driver Richard Pusey has pleaded guilty to a series of crimes he committed before and after the Eastern Freeway police tragedy. The 43-year-old has admitted to attacking another motorist over a city car park dispute, assaulting a woman at his home during a rooftop standoff with police last year, as well as destroying property and sending threatening emails to a bank worker. A magistrate will decide whether to release Pusey from prison on Wednesday. The Taliban says the fear gripping Afghanistan is unfounded and the group has been mislabelled as terrorists. As Michael Genovese reports, Allied soldiers are working alongside the militants in a deal that, like the country, sits on a knife edge.
The last pocket of resistance in Afghanistan, the Panjshir region. Now home to displaced Afghans, young and old, who reject the Taliban. The insurgents are sending hundreds of fighters north to secure the region, but the battle for territory is already won and the PR battle has begun.
Well, I don't think people believe we are terrorists.
When the Taliban ruled in the 90s, they removed the rights of women and Afghans were whipped in the street.
Sharia law is known to everyone and there's no ambiguities about the rights of women.
This time they say they'll alter their interpretation of Sharia law.
On the question of the Taliban, do you trust them now that you have to negotiate?
I don't trust anybody, including you. I love you.
Joe Biden's botched exit plan means he's now relying on the Taliban to keep the peace, a bizarre arrangement that puts side by side Allied soldiers and Taliban militants.
It's strange times, and ultimately we have to put our thoughts of previous tours aside, because ultimately everybody is trying to get the same situation here, which is avoid a humanitarian crisis.
The Taliban has allowed the evacuation of more than 30,000 people so far. More than 450 people were airlifted out by Australia overnight, bringing our total to more than 1,000.
And I want to thank them for the work they're doing on the ground. Incredibly difficult work.
These evacuees landed on safe ground in Melbourne this morning. The US has ordered 18 commercial planes to help clear the masses trying to flee.
There is no way to evacuate this many people without pain and loss of heartbreaking images you see on television.
In the United States, Michael Genovese, 9 News.
2 chimney stacks that stood proudly in England for half a century have collapsed in a synchronised sideways tumble into a giant pile of smoke and rubble. The structures, made up of 100,000 tonnes of steel, were brought down as part of a controlled explosion at a disused coal-fired power station in West Yorkshire. Their demolition drew a big crowd. In a breakthrough in fertility research, Melbourne scientists can now pinpoint the golden window for pregnancy. As Elizabeth Moss explains, it's hoped the discovery will help improve IVF success rates.
Little Harper Hill certainly isn't camera shy. For Shelby and Cameron, parenthood wasn't straightforward, so they turned to IVF.
Went through 2 stim cycles and 3 embryo transfers, and thankfully with the 3rd try, that was Harper.
Success rates for IVF remain relatively low, but researchers from RMIT University and Monash IVF have made a breakthrough in a small molecule known as PCX, which is found in the uterus but reduces at a certain point in the menstrual cycle. New research revealed when levels of the molecule decrease, the womb becomes stickier, meaning the golden window for pregnancy is open. Out of 81 women undergoing IVF, those with a low level of the molecule had a pregnancy pregnancy success rate of 53%, compared to 18% in women whose levels weren't reduced.
We found a marker that can pinpoint this golden window.
Currently, the only way to test for the molecule is through a biopsy, but it's hoped this research can pave the way for the development of non-invasive tests and scans to identify the marker and therefore the perfect time, improving IVF success rates.
We hope that our findings can help clinicians to be more precise.
For the Hill family, it offers hope a sibling for Harper might not be far away.
When you're going through failure after failure, you'll do anything to try and improve your chances.
There's so much on the line getting up to the point of an embryo, and if that can make it work, I guess put the odds better in your favour, then that'd be great.
Elizabeth Moss, 9 News.
To finance now, the All Ordinaries Index finished stronger today, up 36 points. The technology sector lifted while the big miners struggled. Our dollar is buying 71 US cents and 52 pence. Next, border bandits trafficking drugs through the COVID curfew inside the police sting to stop them in their tracks. Plus, the CSIRO reveals how your personality influences your diet. And the dinosaur spotted running laps around Prince's Park. A woman who mowed down her partner with his ute in the Grampians has had her murder sentence slashed by 4 years on appeal. 70-year-old Janice Buffton claims she accidentally drove over Colin Snooks in 2017 at Fines Creek while he was on the phone to 000. The Court of Appeal judges today found the killer's 24-year sentence was crushing and resentenced her to 20 years jail. The pandemic hasn't deterred COVID border bandits trying to sneak drugs across the Murray River. But as crime reporter Lana Murphy discovered, a big police operation has stopped many in their tracks.
Locked down country roads have turned into contraband highways and border bandits are under the spotlight. Inside this Mitsubishi pulled over in Barnawartha this week, police uncovered $1 million worth of cannabis. Despite border restrictions, the 28-year-old driver from Point Cook told police he was on his way to Sydney. But when he couldn't present a permit, they searched the four-wheel drive and found 50 kilograms of the drug stuffed inside.
It just shows that some of those in the criminal world are prepared to take the risks.
Ali Sadeghi Yaman was charged with trafficking and possessing a commercial quantity and remains behind bars. He's one of many alleged drug runners police have stopped in their tracks along the Hume around Seymour, Shepparton and Wodonga.
We are always conscious of what is going up and down the highway.
The three-day operation targeted stolen cars and uncovered a number of drug-affected and disqualified drivers too, including this 24-year-old in Kyalla who baited police, performing wheelies on an unregistered bike, unaware he was being watched from above. His hiding spot quickly uncovered before he was led out of a stranger's backyard. In Wodonga, there was also no escape. This 25-year-old speedster ran into a nearby estate, taking a rest stop before dumping his bike metres from the dog squad. They surrounded him as he hid beside a house, impounding his unregistered bike.
It's extremely dangerous. We see them going through intersections against red lights and travelling on the wrong side of the road.
There are up to 400 officers deployed across the state every single day to police COVID compliance, but the force says there is no way serious criminals can fly under the radar. All up, 14 people were charged, 8 vehicles impounded. The youngest, an unlicensed 17-year-old from Shepparton, who allegedly clocked more than 150 kilometres per hour.
We won't tolerate it and we will throw resources at it to curb their behaviour.
Lana Murphy, 9 News.
Qantas is proving how serious it is about vaccination. The Flying Kangaroo has unveiled a new campaign pulling on heartstrings in the hope Australians will roll up their sleeves.
So where are you headed? Singapore for a wedding. Taking the kids to Disneyland Resort.
London. Going to see someone very special to me.
Frequent flyers who've had the jab can now claim freebies, with a year's worth of free flights also on offer. A battle with weight is not just a matter of body, but of the mind. That's according to new research by the CSIRO. The study has examined the behavioural and emotional characteristics affecting our waistlines during COVID. Among the main groups, the organisation has classified the thinker, along with the craver and the foodie. The research group also pinpointing 2 new categories, the battler had the pleaser. Now, you can find out more on the CSIRO website if you're courageous enough. Walkers out enjoying the sun at Princes Park on Sunday were greeted by an unlikely companion. A young boy in a dinosaur costume took advantage of the warm weather to put a smile on the faces of people getting their permitted 2 hours exercise. Onlookers were clearly amused by the unexpected T-Rex. Some of the dogs, however, were less than impressed by the prehistoric presence. Now here's Tony Jones returning with sport.
I think there'd be a few people on the wagon as of today, Pete, having seen that. But anyway, thank you. Coming up, Caroline Wilson joins us live. Just why is the Collingwood captain shopping himself around? We'll find out. We're live also to Princes Park, where the club still hasn't put David Teague out of his misery. Not in Melbourne, but one mum will make sure of a Melbourne presence. And Ash's year of domination continues. Now for the Open. After a day of high-powered meetings at Princes Park, Carlton has delayed its call on coach David Teague. Let's go live again to Etan Woolley for the details. Etan, you've been there all day. I mean, really, the situation has become quite farcical, hasn't it?
It has, Tony, and such has been the lack of public support. Poor David Teague. He arrived today believing it might be his last as Princes Park. He arrived shortly after 7 o'clock, around the same time as Chief Executive Kane Little, as well as Jeff Walsh, a key member of that football review. It was later new President Luke Sayers presented that review to Teague and the football department, but instead of a formal announcement, just a statement from the President which read in part, the club will take the necessary time required to absorb this review and any outcomes or decisions will be made on the time frame that is in the best interest of the club, not based on external expectations or pressure. Now, what makes this situation really difficult is the fact that Teague and his team need to continue the exit meetings with the players arriving today, among them Eddie Betts, who cleaned out his locker after his retirement. He had this to say about the coach.
It has been pretty tough, but I guess he's doing okay. And yeah, you know, like he said after the game, we wish he had more support from the football club.
Do you kind of hope that he gets some clarity on his future now? Do you think he sort of deserves that?
I think he does. I believe he's the right man for the job. It's whether the club does.
Now, it's understood a big part of this delay is the club's pursuit of Alistair Clarkson. They very much want the former Hawthorn coach, but until he makes a decision, uncertainty remains for so many here at Princes Park. Tony?
As I said, farcical, Ed, and thanks very much for that. So as Carlton's season goes from bad to worse, Collingwood is in a similar boat, with the skipper making noises about jumping ship. Caroline Wilson joins us. Hello, Cara.
Hello, Tony. Unthinkable, isn't it, to think that Scott Pendlebury could end his days playing for someone else?
Yeah, why? I mean, what's all this about? I mean, is he posturing? Does he want more money? What is it?
Whatever it is, whatever's behind this, I think it's really unedifying for the captain of a club that's finished in the bottom two on the ladder, down on its knees, to be talking about another club packaging up a 2-year coaching offer for him involving playing. I think that would be really upsetting for other players who at the moment don't have a coach. They don't know who their president's going to be. We hear even the CEO might not be fully safe next year. And now the captain does this. I mean, is it a sign of the times at Collingwood that no one's prepared to stick fat?
Bring back Eddie.
Well, things have certainly fallen apart since he left. They weren't looking great at the time he left, but they're certainly a lot worse now.
OK, 10 seconds on each of these. The way Carlton's handling this whole David Teague thing.
Appallingly, but I still don't think he's going to be there next year.
All right, and the grand final, Perth, Adelaide, Tasmania?
Perth.
OK, you've got 8 seconds up your sleeve, Caro. Anything else you want to say?
I think it's going to be played between Port Adelaide and the Melbourne Football Club.
All right, Caro, good to see you, and we'll see you on Footy Classified tonight.
You will, Tony. Good night.
OK, thank you. Caroline Wilson joining us there. Geelong star Patrick Dangerfield has consigned Friday night's loss to Melbourne to the Who Cares basket and declared the club has bigger fish to fry, that being Port Adelaide on Friday night, where an element of revenge awaits. Alicia Muling explains.
So often the match winner, Patrick Dangerfield, found himself without a touch in the final quarter against a rampaging Melbourne.
There's an element of reflection and then it's about what you can control, and that's your own preparation to perform.
More than 10 minutes stuck on the bench didn't help either, but the Cats superstar isn't dwelling on the past.
Yeah, it's just the way that happened. It's we've got big fish to fry. You know, we're preparing for the next month.
As was the case last year, Geelong's finals campaign begins against the Power in Adelaide, a match they lost in 2020 by 16 points.
by late Friday night, Saturday morning, no one will have cared what happened in round 23.
Despite the fly-in, fly-out model this season, the Cats are now working to get clearance to travel to Adelaide on Thursday, ahead of Friday night's qualifying final. Jake Levis says he's only just recovered from their nail-biting win at Cardinia Park.
I think it was just me and Harry Petty outside the 50. And I looked at Harry Petty and said, I am not watching this kick.
The City of Churches will also host the Demons and the Lions in what could be a not-so-neutral venue.
I know there's one big Melbourne supporter in Alex Neil-Bullen's mum, Shazza. She'll be there. She'll be in the cheers squad.
Alicia Mewling, 9 News.
Toby Green is relishing the challenge of a Sydney derby for week 1 of the finals. The Giants and Swans last met in a final in 2018, where it was a win to GWS, and Green reckons an injection of youth has them well placed again.
We got 6 or 7 or 8 guys, whatever it is, playing their first final, so it's a different team this year, and that energy that they've brought and the youthful exuberance has been awesome.
A transformation not just in playing personnel, but also in Green himself, who's revelling in his new leadership role this year.
Tried to lead by example and give my best effort for the team, and I've had a lot of guys come along for the ride as well, so they've made it a lot easier. The
Giants and Swans play their elimination final in Launceston on Saturday. Well, the dominance of Ash Barty has gone on show again, winning the final of the Cincinnati Masters. Her Swiss rival, Jill Teichmann, was almost hapless in her bid to overcome the Aussie. The final scoreline of 6-3, 6-1, the ideal lead-up to next week's US Open.
It was so nice to play out in front of you again. I've seen so many smiling kids enjoying tennis. You genuinely reminded me of how much I love this sport. So thank you so much for coming out and making it such a joy for us players. Thank you.
Barty collected a winner's cheque of $357,000, which certainly generated some chatter among the tennis fraternity, given the men's winner, Alexander Zverev, pocketed $918,000. Almost $600,000 difference there, Pete. And it is 2021, isn't it?
Yes, good point. Okay, thank you, Tony. Lavinia's next. Can we expect another cooler day tomorrow, do you think, Lavinia?
We do wish it was 2022, however, I might add. It'll be even colder, actually. The chilly southerly airflow will continue, and this system is set to drench eastern New South Wales. It will spill down over our border, bringing more wet conditions for East Gippsland. I'll have the full Tuesday forecast for you next. Hello again, and it's been a much cooler day right across Victoria. After reaching 22 yesterday, the city only managed a top of 14 today. A band of showers moved through in the early hours of the morning, clearing by 9 a.m. Totals were generally light, with only southeastern suburbs recording anything significant. Pakenham did the best with 8 millimetres. Then we had a stretch of generous sunshine through to the early afternoon and maximums of 14 or 15, but the chilly winds made it feel much colder. At 4:30 this afternoon, Geelong had an apparent temperature of 2.6. Showers returned in the afternoon, and while northern suburbs have only had a sprinkle, there's been 8 millimetres at Werribee, 5 at Frankston and Moorabbin, and also Essendon. Eastern parts of the state have recorded the highest totals, with areas around Bairnsdale collecting up to 15 millimetres, 13 at Wodonga. There's been higher totals across alpine areas, and that's been falling as snow above 1,500 metres, with the snow levels set to lower tonight. The Mallee has been around 10 degrees cooler than yesterday, with maximums in the mid-teens. The far east was the last place to get the cool change, so Mallacoota had a beautiful start to the day and warmed up to 21 just after 10 a.m, but it quickly dropped throughout the afternoon. Sydney recorded a significant milestone today. It reached 24 this afternoon, marking 15 consecutive days of temperatures in the 20s. The first time in 163 years of record keeping that's happened during winter. But the weather has found a way to keep Sydney-siders indoors tomorrow. A low pressure system is expected to form just off the New South Wales coast. That's set to deliver 45 to 90 millimetres of rain. Eastern Victoria will be on the edge of that system, but there'll be mostly dry skies for the rest of the state. The southerly airflow will continue, so it will stay cool, and it'll get very cold tonight. Bendigo, Ballarat and Horsham, all forecast to dip to just 1 degree, 2, 3 and 4 along the Murray. Maximums will be similar to today, ranging from 9 degrees at Ballarat to 15 at Mildura. There'll be light showers for southern and mountain areas, but some heavier falls through the far east. Mallacoota is forecast to receive up to 15 millimetres and Orbost 10. It'll also be very windy in some parts of the state from tomorrow morning. A severe weather warning has been issued for alpine areas, and it'll also be gusty across the Macedon, Yarra and Dandenong ranges. A few light showers will persist across Melbourne tonight, and they'll continue tomorrow morning. Then we'll get a break during the day before they return in the evening, but most suburbs will only collect a few millimetres, up to 3 for Epping, Tullamarine and Werribee. Maximums will be a degree or 2 lower than today, mostly 13. Up to 14 on Thursday, a partly cloudy top of 15 on Friday, 18 on Saturday looks good. Showers are expected to return on Sunday, along with a top of 16 degrees, 19 next Monday. But the city's only expected to reach 13 degrees tomorrow, our coldest day of the month so far, topped and tailed by a few light showers, but dry for much of the day, Pete.
OK, thank you, Lavinia. And Melbourne, that's what's news this Monday. Tracy's next with the current affair. Enjoy your evening and good night.